are going to speak about local state and server cache. And if you don't understand what this means at this particular moment, it's okay. Let's go for it. Quickly reintroducing myself. My name is Natalia Tepluhina. I'm a core member of Vue.js team. I care mostly about Vue documentation. I work as a staff front-end engineer at GitLab, and I'm also a Google developer expert. And because I'm Vue.js core team member, the demo for this talk is going to use Vue and Pinia. And Pinia is a fancy Vue state management tool. But the problem is really framework agnostic. And the solution for this problem, at least one of the solutions, is also framework agnostic. So if you're not into Vue, it's completely fine to still listen to the talk. So, global state. What is global state in a nutshell? It's just some data that you need to share across your application, between different components, between different views, like somewhere that you need it in multiple places. And when we start with local state, in Pinia or in any other state management, it looks quite easy. You create a field in the state, like a counter, and you use it in your application. If you need to change this field, well, it's also simple. You just have an increment, and it's amazing. You call the increment, counter increases, everything is great. So, we're dealing here with very specific state. It's synchronous. We don't make any asynchronous changes to our state. It's non-persistent. Our state exists only on the client side. Server knows nothing about this. It has one source of changes, the increment function. You click it, you have counter. And it does not create a lot of boilerplate. This one is a bit debatable depending on the state manager. For Redux, it will be probably a bit more, having reducer. With Vuex, that was Vue State Manager for times, it would be probably a bit bigger. Still, it's not a boilerplate. Now, let's add some server data to the picture. And for the purpose of this talk, I will be using an application I've built where I'm showing the list of statues of Athena, because I was a geek kid. I liked Greek mythology when I was a kid a lot. And I'm not lying, my favorite goddess was Athena. This is not made up for the talk. So why not making the list of Athenas? Imagine that we have this very simple application, just a list of statues and a counter, just a total, like how many statues do we have on this page. So here and here, we're referencing the same part of the global state. You may say, okay, let's fetch it in the root, but well, if we go for the next page, we have one character, one Athena, and we don't want to fetch all the list. We will be doing fetching in the navbar. You may say, okay, you have navbar persisting throughout the application, make the call there. Well, imagine that I have a product manager that tells, sometimes we want to show the counter, sometimes we don't want so. Two independent components, requiring the same set of data, the list of Athenas. Sounds simple, right? What is complicated about this stuff? Well, okay. First of all, we have two additional fields that are basic requirement for any asynchronous operation, loading and error. Because you need to wait for the promise to resolve, and you need to display an error if something bad happens. Not a boilerplate, really. And we add some kind of an action to fetch data. It's a synchronous one, we change the loading, we have our response, and we store it to our characters in the store. Now, obviously, we need data in both components. So we're going to fetch data in both components. Very simple one. We're using the store, we call it fetch characters. And data are there, and everything is cool, but yes, we have two calls. Components are independent, then can be used completely independently from each other. So we need this call. We just cannot move it somewhere else. Fine, let's deduplicate it. We're developers, right? If we can take down the malicious website with non-consensual images with JavaScript, we can deduplicate the call. That's for sure. So we create this clumsy getter that checks if we have any characters, or maybe we're loading. If we're loading or have characters, fetch is already started, so don't fire the second request. And we make this check. If there is no characters, let's fetch them. Otherwise, fine. Amazing. We have one call. We solved the issue. Everything is good. Now we want to go to a separate page with Athena. And on the main page, we fetch a short list, just 3 fields: ID, image URL, and name. The wind adds some dramatic effect to my talk. And when we fetch a certain character, certain Athena, what we want to do is to extend the object that is already existing in the state. Because next time we go to a certain page, we don't want to fetch anymore. We want to keep it in our state. Just 3 fields: year, museum, description. And obviously, we need also a separate fetch character function, because what if I go to a page of Athena from Aegina first, not having a list of the characters? So, sounds easy, right? No. First, when we are fetching the character, we are going to check that array of the characters is there. And if it's there, we find the character that already exists in the list, and we extend it. It's very clumsy, like extending with existing character description is description, but you get the point. Looks fine. And in our fetch characters, which was quite short and very understandable, we add the check, because what if we went to the separate page first? Now we need to count on this fetched character and include it in our array. Okay, fine. Now we are okay. It should be fine. No, it's not. You go to a single character page, then you go to the main page, and you have this, like, very lonely Athena from Aegina. Why? What happened? Because we had this check, remember? Where we were checking the length of the list of characters. Now it's 1, and everything is broken. So when we're dealing with a state manager, and we want to deal with server data, we come with a set of problems. Let it pass. The first is how to fetch only when data is not fetched already. Makes sense. We want to make this check every single time, and there is no built-in mechanism for most of state managers. How to keep my data up to date? In the current solution, I never refetch until I refresh the page. What if data on the server changed? What if I have a different list now? We don't know. We don't count on this. Probably we would have some kind of set interval and polling and all the problems that polling adds to your application. Or build WebSocket, which is like more problems. What if the components start fetching simultaneously? In this case, we deduplicate, but there are more complex cases. Because we are dealing with a state that's asynchronous, and it's persisted remotely. You don't control this state. This state is on the server, and it has a shared ownership. You don't own changes. Server owns changes. So not all states are born equal. There is a synchronous state, there is a asynchronous one. And dealing with them is a common problem for many applications. If you're lucky and using GraphQL, okay, if you're a front-ender, you're lucky and you're using GraphQL, there is also a solution. Let me share it a bit. So global state, local cache, local state, and server cache. And server cache for GraphQL is kind of solved because we have Apollo client. Apollo client usually fetches data and stores them in the Apollo cache. Next time you want to retrieve the same set of data, no matter from where in the application, you have this response immediately. But that's for GraphQL people. So is fetching data with a state manager is the wrong way? Yes, I'm like shamelessly reusing the t-shirt from Kyle. Is it okay to fetch data using just your normal state manager? Yes, it is okay. No, it is not a wrong way, but it's the same as pulling over a t-shirt through the sleeve hole. It's complicated. You will have your result, but you will put a lot of work on this normally. And there is a solution that came, I'm ashamed to say so, from React world, not from the Vue, by React Query. And right now, React Query exposes its core, so we have Vue Query for Vue. I have no idea if we have anything for Angular, but we must. And I just want to have a little code demo to show you how easily these problems are solved with this tool. So let's try to pull over our t-shirt in a proper way. With this, I'll start the live coding. So We have this application that doesn't work currently at all. Make it a bit bigger. And we want to fetch a list of characters from the API. Okay, now tell me, is the font size enough to be readable or not? Okay, you can read it. Good. I mean, you can read it or you're using your phone already, so I'm fine. Let's start fetching characters. I already created a few helpers in the API that uses just Axios and REST API, and I will be using them in my component. So first we want to have some data. And I alias data as characters immediately. And to fetch the data using Vue query or React query, you have hook in React or composable in Vue called useQuery. First parameter here is the name. It's a key for our cache where we want to store our characters. And second is actually the function to get characters. And I need to comment this because we're not using this anymore. Let's go to the browser. No, to the browser, please. Open DevTools. See a bunch of errors, obviously. But what I want to see if we actually fetched anything. And yes, we did. There is an array of data, but it's stored under character data. And I want to iterate over characters, so I need to retrieve data from this list. And if you are using, again, Vue query, you can have a select function. You specify that you want res response, and you get res data out of it. Okay, are we good now? Yes, we are fetching the list of the characters. This is basically it. For now, it's not cached, but we will come to this a bit later. For now, it's only fetched. Let's also handle loading and error states because it's problematic. So is loading, is error, it's all the things that are exposed via useQuery return. And I want to remove these two. Okay, there is loading in our template. So whenever we refresh, we should have a loading. We don't because I'm using the local server. But if we do some little throttling, yeah, there was a little moment of actual loader. Okay, give me back my fast network. And if we make an error, I don't know, let's make fake request. You can see that there is 3 failing requests. And then we have this like something went wrong, which is super bad HTML. I'm sorry for this. Why do we have these retries? By default, the library will retry 3 times for you and only fail after this. Like maybe there was a little server hiccup and maybe we just want to try it again. Sometimes this behavior is not desired and you can disable it quite easily. I just say retry. False. And if I try again, like 1 try, and we're done. Okay, let's get back our working API. There is one more interesting thing. Like if I change the focus right now, there will be one more call, like this. By default, React query and Vue query refetch on window refocus, which again, sometimes is a desired behavior because you want your data to be fresh. Maybe user wasn't using this tab for like 2 hours and then you refetch. Sometimes it's not, and again, it's very simple to fix this. Ooh, it's so bright. I cannot see my own cursor. Like, we can disable it with refetch on window focus, false. It has a whole bunch of configuration, but we won't dive into this too deep. What we want to do now, we want to fetch data from 2 locations, from our main page and from the navbar. And I'm just copy-pasting this for now. And I'll go to my characters navbar and just put it here. And remove characters. Spoiler, it's going to fail. It's completely broken. What happened? it cannot read property of undefined because in my navbar, I'm just checking for characters length, but characters are not fetched. Oh, at the first moment I'm loading the page, they are not fetched. We don't have initial data for the characters. So to fix this, let's go with placeholder data. And it should repeat the same shape that we have in our object. So it will be data and empty array. Now we're good, now we're good. Maybe we can do a little bit of abstraction. So those of you who use Vue will know what I do. It's actually writing a custom composable or a hook if we were in React. Let's say composable.js, and I will just export function use characters, which will be a simple copy-paste from both of our components. Here we go. I'm just taking it from here and moving it to composables. And of course, I'm moving imports outside of this. Now we only need to return our characters, is error, and is loading state. And here, instead of our query, if we do like this, I can just import use characters from the composables. And return everything I need. Characters is loading and is error. Basically use characters. I can do the same in the navbar, but to save us 30 seconds, I'm not doing this. So, oh, we're so unhappy now. Imports. Good, amazing, but there is still a problem. If I go somewhere else and back, I'm refetching data. I just built long, expensive API client, like my own fancy Axios. So what do we need to actually preserve the data in the cache? For this, we have an amazing parameter called stale time. And in all fairness, I'm using Apollo as my workspace. I really wished Apollo has this feature. It doesn't, but it's so nice. Stale time is actually you define how long you want your data to stay in the cache. If I say 20 seconds right now, characters will be in the cache for 20 seconds, and after this, they're considered stale. So any next interaction, change in the route, remounting the component will fetch data. I'm going just for 5 seconds right now. And I refresh the page, I go somewhere else, this is not working now, and you can see that request is only one. After 5 seconds, if I try to repeat the same, now we are refetching again. And let's just give a little last piece to show how we are fetching by ID, because it's a bit more complicated, so I don't want to show only the shiny, nice parts of the query. Also bad, not bad, but questionable syntax in the character. So we want our character to be fetched to by ID. Now we are passing the parameter there. And we want our, obviously, data, alias this, oh my god, what I'm doing, character, and I'm not even going for is, okay, I'm going for is loading. And this will be, again, use query. Here the syntax goes a bit weird. You have an array where the first key is actually character, and the second one is a parameter you want to pass to fetch data. In our case, it's props ID. It's passed to the page by the router. And the second parameter now is a callback. Because we want to pass parameter, we cannot just pass a function like this. I'm going to get character, and I'm passing props ID here. And I need to remove both of these refs because it was a placeholder. Let's see if I failed or not. I did fail. Oh, I did fail because I didn't use a select. So right now, again, if I go to View DevTools and check what's happening, you have character data, but I'm trying to reference character. So here we go. Where is my cursor again? Trust me, it's really hard to operate on the dark theme like this. I should have used light. Never believe I could say this, but... So here we want our select function, and we want to return the data. Now we're good. Now we're good. We have the Athena. And now they are all cached for 5 seconds. Oh, I actually have seen this one yesterday in the Acropolis Museum. So for 5 seconds, we have it all cached. You can cache for 2 minutes. You can do like this. Vue query and React query also support mutations, which when we are sending a request to change the data on the server, and they work with a cache. So with a mutation, you can update the cache, and it will update your application as well. Again, just for the sake of time, heat, and lunch ahead, I'm not going to show you the mutation. I could live code it, but trust me, you will be bored by the end. So maybe it's not the completely right way, and state is not completely wrong. But it's a nice way to try, learn, and ask questions about, like Kyle said. Thank you all for being here and listening to the talk.